I am very confident that this program has done a lot of good for a lot of people, and I'm pretty proud to be presenting it. It seems as if my entire life has unfolded to be a very good match for this program. This is kind of like a skeleton, and I try to flesh it out as best as I can with everything that's part of my experience and my education. One of the reasons that this program is popular, I think, is because we're talking about the human condition, and since we're all humans, we all kind of sort of understand this stuff, but we're going to put it into nice tidy packages so people can juggle the concepts more easily in their brain and make use of them. The goal is for people to understand that if they don't actively embrace an identity crisis and actively move through the process of recreating who they will be next, then they are likely to continue to define themselves by virtue of the previous relationship and all of the conflict that is a part of that. Behavior that if they were to see in a vacuum, they would say is terrible behavior, seems good, right, and just by virtue of the idea that the other person deserves it, given our own sense of our own victimization. Yeah, people have been victimized. Everybody has been, in some way or shape or form in their lives. I'm certainly not going to say that there are no victims out there, but there's a great big difference between being a victim and living life as a victim. And if we live life as a victim, then we've been victimized twice, only the second time with our permission. Identity crises are tough because people don't know who they're going to be next until they get there. Now, once they get over the hump, they might say to themselves, yeah, maybe I should have done that a long time ago. But until then, people don't like uncertainty. If you have a great deal of uncertainty, especially with regards to the core of your very being, your definition of yourself, then you have anxiety. Anxiety is all about not knowing what's going to happen next. And anxiety is painful. And so if there's all this anxiety about who we're going to be next, right down to the very core of our being, there is going to be some resistance in moving that direction. When we see people that are locked into that ongoing definition of themselves by virtue of the previous relationship, and imagine that they are sticking with the devil that they know versus the devil that they don't. If parents weren't so overwhelmed by the nature of that identity crisis, then maybe they'd be more naturally likely to see that their kids are suffering big time as a part of their identity crisis. Because kids, one of the first things out of their mouths when they hear about a divorce very often is, well, am I still going to see you? And they're not going to have the adult logic to deal with this on an adult level, and they are not going to have the adult power to make things happen. And whenever they do try to deal with this, chances are, in their desperate efforts, they're going to make it worse. It just sucks all of their energy away, and they will go for what's easy and go for the immediate gratification. And the big challenge for the day is not any longer how do I fulfill my long-term goals and become an Air Force pilot or whatever by getting a good grade on this exam, but rather, screw all that. I have no energy left. The wind is out of my sails. How do I distract myself from my pain today? Anything distracting will work. And that can be overeating, it can be drug use, alcohol, sex, violence, any of which are very stimulating and therefore very distracting. Imagine the emotions that are going to be stirred up in this kid with regards to resentment of the person doing the insulting and rising to the defense of the person who's being insulted. And so dad may think that he is pulling the kid more into their camp by virtue of putting mom down, but as the child reacts to this with resentment towards dad, they're also likely to rise to the defense of mom, to try to protect mom, to arrange for dad to not have the ability to drive her away. And you see how that feeds into their motivation not to be abandoned. So dad is building a love-hate relationship between themselves and the child by insulting mom, and moving the child more into mom's camp by insulting mom, and the child rises to mom's defense. Now, that's not at all what Dad had in mind when he was insulting Mom. He was thinking, in keeping with the zero-sum game, that if I can just convince the kid that Mom's a louse, then the child will love me more than her, and I don't have to worry. In keeping with, again, the faulty logic that the child's love is a zero-sum game. A business person metaphor, where people who do not necessarily like each other are able to maintain contact with each other without defining themselves by virtue of each other, so that they can both move towards their common goal. And in the co-parenting business, the common goal is the greater glory of the kid.
Yet often the competition between co-parents for this love yields the very conflict that puts these beloved children at such risk. And it's all based on a false premise, that children will run out of love. Again, it's important to remember that we love our children more than we dislike our co-parent. And keeping that in mind is one giant step closer to not using them for a tug of war, and encouraging them to love the other parent.